Everybody, please let us sit down. We're going to start the event. Unless you are from the protocol or the media, please sit down. So good.
This assessment aims to evaluate the impact of the disaster in terms of population, physical infrastructure, and service delivery. Additionally, we will estimate the requirement for reconstructing infrastructure and restoring services in the short, medium, and long term. Medium aim aims to contribute to a resilient economy, fostering a global, national, and international effort to meet infrastructure. We would like to extend an invitation for your participation in significant long-terms. We would like to thank all those that contributed. The federal government, the United States, the federal states, the United Nations, the World Bank. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you all for your collaboration. Thank you. On June 11, 2024, the Somali government, in collaboration with the United Nations, the World Bank, and the European Union, will launch a rapid post-disaster needs assessment report. This report will serve as the impact and disaster effects of El Nino floods within Somalia. This assessment aims to evaluate the impact of the disaster in terms of population, physical infrastructure, and service delivery. Additionally, reconstructing infrastructure and restoring services in the short, medium, and long
Okay. Again, there is another order from the Office of the Prime Minister. He is coming in 10 minutes and he said, wait us. So please bear with us. And I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. We do apologize in advance.
On June 11, 2024, the Somali government, in collaboration with the United Nations, the World Bank, and the European Union, will launch
من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are here for the event of launching rapid post-disaster need assessment that was ongoing for the last 5 months. I'll go through the agenda. First, we will have an opening remarks by the Commissioner of Sodma, and then followed by remarks by the Minister of Interior, Federalization and Reconciliation, followed by remarks from the Minister of Planning, Investment and Economic Development, and then we will have a brief presentation on the key findings of the assessment, followed by a video clip, and then we will have speeches by our development partners who were supporting us through the process in terms of technical and financial support, the UN agency, the EU, and the World Bank. And then followed by key node speakers from the federal government of Somalia and the state government ministers and representatives. Finally, will be followed by a closing remarks by the Deputy Prime Minister himself, and then we will have a photo group and lunch. So I welcome the Commissioner of Sodma, Commissioner Mahmoud Maalim, the host of this event. Welcome, Mr. Commissioner.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين مدن يا لمروين أنا جو قدومي هذا مارينتا مسيبوينكا وحشرفيا إن مانتا كهذا كلن كان قيمها بدن والوجود أفرع وربحنت الجسو ديارية قيمين تباهدا كذا شيء مصيبة دي BDNA الصومالية كذا عضي دايتي للصوت عفين وعمرك هراء سدي رؤوسه دوينيا marti sharafta ugu horeeyay ra'iisul wasaaraha ku-xigeenka Jamhuuriyadda Federaalka Soomaaliya wasiirada safiirada wakiilada ka jooga deeq-bixiyaasha sida Bangiga Adduunka Midowga Yurub qaramada Midoobay iyo sidoo kale danayaasha muhiimka u ah la tacaalida maareynta masiibooyinka dalkeena ka dhaca mudanayaal iyo marwooyin maanta waxaan daahfuraynaa warbixin ka soo baxday cilmi baaris laga sameeyay dhibaatadii ka dhalatay fatahaadii dayrta ee 2023 warbixintu waa natiijo ka dhalatay dadaal iskaashi oo ay wada sameeyeen khubaro ka socotay dowladda Soomaaliya hay'adaha sare ku xusan waxayna warbixintu tilmaamaysaa in masiibo aan baaxadeeda la koobi karin ay loo soo arag hore ay ka dhacdo dalkeena sidoo kale waxay qeexaysaa wadada loo marayo ka soo kabashada bulshada iyo dib u dhiska kaabayaasha dhaqaalaha ee ku waxyeeloobay mudanayaal iyo marwooyin daadadka dayrta ayaa geystay khasaare nafeed mid baraka mid dhaqaale oo ka badan 176 milyan oo doolarka Mareykanka kuwaasoo isugu jiro waxyeelada dalagga beeraha xoolaha ceelasha biyaha dhismaha iskuulada iyo isbitaalada webiyada waliba fayadhowrka bulshada oo gabi ahaanba baaba'ay haddaba si loo helo kabasho bulshada oo degdeg ah waxaa warbixintu sheegaysaa in lagama maarmaan tahay in la helo dhaqaale gaaraya 230.6 milyan oo dollar guud ahaan tirada dadka ay fatahaadu waxyeelaysay waa 2.5 milyan oo qof in ka badan 1.2 milyan oo qofna way ku waxyeelowday sidoo kale waxaa la diiwaan geliyay inay 188 qofood oo dhimasho ay jirto dadkan intooda badan waxaa hore waxyeeleeyay abaartii 2020 iyo 2023 taasoo uga dartay xaaladda cunno yarida ee dalka ka jirtay mudanayaal iyo marweyn sida kaliya ee lagu soo kaban karo dhibaatadii aan sare ku soo xusay isla markaana loo abuuri karo bulsho wax walba ugu nugul waa in dib loo dhisaa kaabayaashii bulshada muhiimka u ahaa guryaha ceelasha biyaha dhismaha goobaha waxbarashada caafimaadka horumarinta beeraha iyo fayadhowrka haddaba waxaa maanta madashan loo fadhiyaa qaabka ugu habboon ee ku dhisi karno bulsho adkaysi u leh aafooyinka kala gedisan ee dalka ka dhaca mar walba waxaan si kal iyo laab lah ugu mahad celinayaa dhammaan hay-adaha deeqbixiyaasha iyo mas-uuliyiinta kale ee mar walba sida hagar la-aanta leh u garab taagan bulshada Soomaaliyeed gaar ahaan marka ay xaaladda adagi soo food saarto mahadsanidin
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I will try to summarize in less than a minute what the Commissioner said. The Commissioner thanked everybody who contributed to the development and preparation of this report. The report comes after El Nino that hit the country with affected people of 2.5 million and displacement of 1.2 million. Also, the fatalities were 118. And the disaster came in a situation where the country already with droughts and good floods in 2022 and 2023. The report summarizes the key damages, losses, and also identifies the need to recover from those damages and losses with 230.6 million US dollars. And that's only the 16 districts that were assessed. And now I welcome the Minister of Interior. Minister, welcome, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مدن رئيس الوزراء وزيران كلها قناهي وكيل هذا باشا عالم كا دبلوماسيين تا مدحدا هيئة الصدمة يا شغاله هذا مرتي شرفته كسوق قال مناسبة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مدن يا مرويين سوماليا مسيبوين كدبيعة دلهان كدعة وهو وين فتحات يضوفانتي إلينو أبارها دوفانتي إلينو خساره بحد لها كذا شيء لقول واي نفي مال. هذا بعد فرق مانتا وربحنتا وأحمد لما يسترن قيمتها وحيالها يا خسارها إلينو يحلي الرباط كدير طلبات يصدح وطلبة مهمة وأنا إن دبان هيدا الدولة هيركودا كل الدول أي وضع شقين فلين إيوه كبولغاريس تلوين كان يحوجها كشرة كجاري. وزارة أريمها جودها يهيدا صدمة وحنا جوعان إن عن كلا شقين دورنا معمول الجبلية دا إلى هير طولو إن الفدوديان إسلامر كان كارين بقول لك قاتان كبولكانيتا فلينتا وربحنتان يتلوين كحبار سنتاهي. أريمها الله حريرة إثبات الكلمة يا سامين تودا سوى الله قبته مدن رئيس الوزراء كدولة دهان وإن قرشياشينو هيرك كالدول أيسكا كاشدان سوى قبض كأيوه تعالد هوله فضولانا وقدام بينتي وحانم هالعلينا يا صاحبة بيش عالمك هيدها قرقارك سيدا أي مرمى قعنوا جيستان هؤلاء بناء لماذا أنيقو وقول باقية إن سيدو ولا شقيان هيدها كلك تله هوشان سيلو لسه كارانك يا وذها واتكيسك مسيبوينك هو كسر نقطة ذلك سوماليا مرلبات وسلامتين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. That was Minister of Moifa, Minister Yusuf. And if I try to summarize what he said is, he mentioned the size of the disaster, and also as a Minister of Interior, he promised that he will closely work with the state governments until the village level, district, state, regional, and federal level to ensure the implementation of this report, so that it becomes a whole government approach. And we thank you, Mr. Minister. Now it's followed by a short video clip, and then followed by a presentation by the Managing Director of New York, Hassan Issa. Let us start the video clip now.
dalka waxaa soo wajahay laba masiibo cimiladu keentay bartamihii sanadkii 2022. inta badan gobollada waddanka waxaa ku dhuftay abaar xooggan taas oo sababtay barakaca in ka badan 1 milyan oo qof. markii laga hortagay macluushii waxaa bilowday xilli roobaadka guga, waxaana ka dhashay fatahaado ay sameeyeen webiyada iyo daadad ku rogmaday magaalooyinka qaar, taasoo kordhisay tirada dadka barakacay. dabayaaqadii 2023 dalka waxaa ku dhufatay daadadkii El Niino, waxaana ay sababtay fatahaado ay sameeyeen webiyada iyo daadad xooggan oo ku rogmaday magaalooyinka qaar oo ay ka mid tahay caasimadda Muqdisho. daadadkan ayaa saameeyey 2,482,000 oo qof oo ku nool 36 degmo, halka ay ku barakaceen 1 milyan oo qof. xubnaha ugu nugul ee saameynta ka soo gaartay waxay iskugu jiraan haween, carruur, waayeelo iyo naafo. masiibadan waxay baabi'isay dhammaan kaabayaashii dhaqaalaha sida wadooyin, buundooyin iyo garoomada diyaaradaha oo aad muhiim ugu ah horumarinta dhaqaalaha bulshada. hay'adda maareynta masiibooyinka qaranka Soomaaliyeed ee Sodma waxay la xiriirtay qaramada midoobay, midowga Yurub iyo bangiga lacagta adduunka si ay qiimeyn ugu sameeyaan waxyeelada khasaaraha ka dhashay El Niino isla xilligaas. Sodma waxay casuuntay sidoo kale dhammaan wasaaradaha iyo hay'adaha ay qusayso, kuwaasoo ka kala socday lakabyada federaalka iyo gobolka. dowladda federaalka Soomaaliya oo taageero ka helaysa saaxiibadeeda caalamiga ah ayaa go'aansatay inay qiimeyn ku sameyso waxyeelada khasaarihii ka dhashay masiibadii El Niino. 36 degmee saameynta ka soo gaartay masiibada, 16 degmo ka mid ah kana mid ah kuwa ugu daran ayaa qiimeyntan lagu sameeyey. qiimeyntan waxaa lagu ogaaday khasaaraha soo gaaray guryaha, waxbarashada, caafimaadka, beeraha, xoolaha, biyaha, fayadhowrka, wadooyinka, buundooyinka iyo maciishada. hadafka kama dambaysta ee qiimeyntan waxa ay tahay in la aruuriyo xogta dhaawaca iyo khasaaraha iyo in la ogaado baahiyaha iyo qorshayaasha soo kabashada guud ahaan la isku raacay. ugu dambeyn, hay'adaha qaranka Soomaaliyeed iyo saaxiibada caalamiga ah waxaa loo soo jeediyey inay u jiheeyaan qorshayaasha iyo mashaariicyadooda sidii loo fulin lahaa soo kabashada ku cad qiimeyntii lagu sameeyey khasaarihii ka dhashay masiibadii El Niino BDNA.
And now I do welcome Hassan Issa, the Managing Director of New York, who was the lead technical person from the government side in this assessment. Welcome, Hassan.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'll try my best to be as quick as possible. This is going to be just a brief overview of the process we've been through for the last 5 months. This is an image that I want people to actually look at the lenses before the flooding, after flooding. During the flood, you can see the differently color-coded. That's the intensity of the flooding. We were supported by a company called Ipsos through the World Bank. So the imagery had a huge input in the PNLA process. Next, please. This post-disaster risk assessment had encompasses three perspectives or objectives. Basically, was to evaluate the physical damages, economic losses, and at the same time identify the human recovery needs based on information that was actually obtained from the affected sectors and populations. This is also estimate the infrastructural reconstruction and self-delivery restoration in the short-term, mid-term, and long-term recovery. It also fosters a very strong coordination mechanism between the national and federal member states or international partners in terms of effort of rebuilding a very strong society in the principle of building back better. The scope of this exercise, basically, those 36 districts affected by the El Nino, but we targeted 16 most affected districts. This is indicators, basically, the length. We look at the length of the displacement, the magnitude of damage and losses in specific districts. And these are 4 states and BRA in Mogadishu. The sectoral scope, basically, this composed of 9 sectors and two write-up analysis, microeconomic and human impact analysis. And they all group across 4 thematic areas. This is, if you look at this sketch, when we initiated the process of the PNLA process, it was a government whole approach from the district level. This is where the data collections are happening, and this is where the people actually are affected. And then we had a federal member state sector assessment teams. Their sole responsibility, basically, was to lead and produce sectors, draft reports, at the same time also feed the information to the core team. And the next level is the core technical team. These are Sodma, MOPI, World Bank, EU, and the UN. So this basically technical team were providing advice and also at the same time facilitating the data collections, compiling reports, and making sure it's all aligned to the standardized PNLA report. And then we had a steering committee or steering secretariat. These are also the same case, a very senior level, policy level, Sodma, MOPI, EU, and World Bank. So this was just an ad hoc meeting. It was a need-based meeting. When we have issues, we always have consult them and they give us a policy advice and support as well. And here, as the vertical you see, there is World Bank. Supported us actually hire a remote sensing expert analysis called Ipsos, and that's the image prior to this one they produced. Next slide, please. But I want to ask our colleagues, please. This has been a very, very tough 5 months, and I want you to help me, please give them a hand of applause for helping us. Thank you. These are actually step-by-step approach to recovery. From contextualization of the whole process, identifying overall context and the baseline of each sector, using the key indicators prior to the crisis and disaster, and then in step 2 that also feeding is assessment of effects, assessing the damage to infrastructure, the physical assets, loss of production, and also loss to be cured according to the assessment. And then the third one is the impact analysis. This is a write-up. It's not a sector itself, but basically looking at how the GDP of Somalia was affected. What was the living condition, the livelihood, the food security, the gender equality within the system as well, and the social inclusion. And the fourth important one is identifying and prioritization the most affected population and sectors. So using the principle of building back better, and then of course, DRR as a cross-cutting sector was also incorporated into identification alongside the livelihood, environment, and climate change. So, but the most important one here, after identifying the needs, is the recovery strategy. we looking at actually informing and assisting the policy makers in supporting them, identify and guide them to make the right choices, the right policy choices, and the right decisions when it comes to policy recommendation. So that's something actually needs a lot more discussion in the future. Next, please. The sectors, as I said, it's 4 thematic areas. We have social sectors, which is composed of housing, health, and education. Productive sectors, agriculture and livestock, infrastructure, water, energy, and transport. When we say transport, also roads and bridges are also included. And then we have cross-cutting social protection, employment, livelihood, environment and climate change, disaster risk reduction, and resilience. In each sector, we had a designated government lead agency where basically is to coordinate data collection, information sharing between federal member states and the PDA team. And then we had a lead agency from the international partners. For example, housing, we have partnered with Ministry of Public Works, which is the lead agency. UNDP and UN Habitat as the lead agency, IAM and the World Bank as being the contributing agency, basically, and all the same for all other sectors. Next, please. The process, when we know when October, November, December last year, the whole world was actually talking about El Nino and flooding, but Somalia was no different. And end of December, when we realized the magnitude of the disasters, the magnitude of damage and the losses, we have come together, both Somali government or international partners, and we've launched the first initiation and consultation and inception of RPLNA. On February, March, that's when the data collection started from the district level for various member states. And then March, April, and May, we have started gathering the data and drafting reports and data analysis. The last 10 days of May, the revision of reporting, compiling reporting have started. We've also looked at the conflict analysis, conflict lenses, and the gender review in each chapter or in each sector, make sure they're all incorporated. And then the first week of June, we have finalized the report, validated for the federal member states, validated for the federal government of Somalia, and we're here today, 11th of June, launching the report. We have executive report. Hopefully, in 1st of July, we'll be able to produce a full report where we're going to have disseminate and provide and actually distribute to our partners. So that's we're looking around 1st of July. Next. The financial impact in Somalia of the floods. The damages, $126.6 million. Losses, $49.5 million. And the needs were $230.6 million. You can see all categories according to the sectors. So this 31%, these are all agriculture and livestock, where is the most hit as well, and the transport. So this is going to be sectorial based, but you go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So this is more detail. If you can see the social sectors, the needs is $50 million. That actually counts around 22% of the shared total needs. And then productive sectors, around 60 million. We're looking at 27% of the total shared needs of 230 million that we've already counted. Infrastructure was the most hit, transport, where we've lost bridges and roads and entire infrastructure has been submerged by the floods. We look at $76 million. That's around 34%. That's huge. And then for cross-cutting, around 44 million is around 18% of the total shared levels. Next, please. This is by region. Jubaland, Gedo, Jolo was the most hit. 12% of the share of total percent. That's actually huge, followed by Barbere. And the southwest, we have targeted Baidao and Bardale. Galmudug, we have targeted Buduk, which is South Galkayo. We know what happened in South Galkayo, so we also targeted that. Hiran, we have targeted Baladweyne, Bulabird, and Johar, and Mogadishu is Hodan, Kashekha, with the Jews. So these are the 16 districts that we targeted. Next, please. The economic impact of Somalia, we all know Somalia heavily depends on agriculture. The floods have submerged thousands of hectares of farmland. It has destroyed crops, destroyed livestock, destroyed agricultural infrastructure, leading to actually reduced production. That means there's going to be reduced income of our farmers. So that has a knock-on effect on our Somali country GDP 2024. So 17% of our country GDP has also been impacted. The floods have an impact on the poverty rates. People who are already vulnerable, already in the poverty line, are slipping more into the poverty as well. Next, please. We have 4 principles here, 5 principles we call no poverty. So this is aligned to the SDG of Somalia 2030. So around 2.1 million people already living in poverty before the floods are now actually risk and falling into even deeper poverty. For no hunger principle, around 300,000 people, additional people actually facing food insecurity as a result of the flooding. But unfortunately, 1.5 million children under the age of 5 are also projected to experience acute malnutrition. For the water points, we all know it's already been damaged, especially for Jubaland and Hirshabelle. The latter is completely destroyed. 2 million people are affected by that as well. For quality education principle, most of the schools in those actually areas in the federal member states are owned by the private sectors. And when there is no schools, means there is no salary. When there is no school, means and the children have around 338,000 children actually affected, and around 600 teachers actually lost income because of that. And also, as normal, the most vulnerable people are also the most affected people. Women and girls have been disproportionately affected by the floods, actually facing increased poverty and protection risk. Next. We are envisioning to have 3 key pillars for the recovery framework, hopefully. Building community resilience to resist repeated shocks and crises, revitalization of community economy and people's livelihood, and resumption of access to essential needs. So the vision here is already in our executive summary. Because of the interest of time, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is we call the guiding verses or principle in terms of resilience recovery. The post-disaster risk assessment basically give a solid basis when it comes for quantifying the recovery needs, but also formulating a broad strategy. But recovery needs must be actually considered the most important. We need to move from disaster recovery, disaster risk recovery, disaster framework recovery to more resilient recovery. That is going to lead more into the period or any other like assessment in the future. Now we have to ask ourselves 2 questions here. How are the policymakers make use of these guidelines? How are we going to inform our stakeholders, our policymakers in terms of formulating a framework in the short term, mid-term, and long-term recovery? And the second question is, what are the key recommendations for our policymakers actually to use in the process of recovery? So these are all 8 guidelines, and hopefully we'll be able to proceed that, inshallah. Next, please. The final slide. After the whole process now is completed, what is the next step for us? What are the areas we believe is actually paramount important that will be considered and discussed alongside after we produce the report, hopefully by 1st of July? The policy and priority needs. How are we going to prioritize sectors? How is this going to fit into NTP or any other government national plans of Somalia? Institutional arrangements is going to be how we're going to look at the centralized coordinations, how we're going to decentralize implementation partners at the local level, financing plans, fundraising, advocacy, resource mobilization, and then implementation arrangements. We know federal government of Somalia, we're more of a policy level arrangement and the real-time coordination happens at the local level, for the member states, and district level. And finally, and the biggest one, is the donor conference. Hopefully this is something where our senior government officials on a senior international partner list emphasize more. It's very vital for us to go from being a document to a real life engagement with the donors and fundraising. Next. If you have any feedback or any questions, please, you are more than happy to contact me and Ham Mukhtar, who is our information management specialist. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Hassan, and the presentation will be put in our website, sodma.gov.so. Everybody will have that chance to access and read. And if you have a comment or a feedback or recommendation, we do welcome, we will share the contacts. Other than the government departments, there are also civil society organizations, private sector, and we recognize them and we thank them for their support and accepting our invitation. Also, we have diplomats, the EU ambassador, the OIC ambassador. We thank you for giving us a time, and thank you. Now, we do welcome the Deputy SID, a man who doesn't require introduction, George Conway. Welcome, sir.
Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, Excellency the Minister of Interior, Excellency Commissioner of Sodma, representatives of the state governments, including the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs from Southwest State, development partners and colleagues. Thank you to Sodma colleagues for that really good presentation. And I really am glad to have this opportunity to participate in today's presentations on the findings of the rapid PDNA that's been undertaken over recent months. The Deer floods were the worst floods that Somalia has experienced in over a century. Disrupting communities, affecting the lives of millions of people, and causing widespread damage and losses to infrastructure and productive assets. And of course, this came right on the back of a drought that was the worst in 50 years that compounded vulnerabilities for already very vulnerable communities. So it has been a very important exercise to take stock of the damages and losses and to clearly articulate priorities for investment in recovery, in building back better, and certainly with an eye towards building greater resilience to such shocks in the future. As important, however, is the process which has been very much led by the government, supported by partners, which has contributed to building national capacities for managing disaster management cycles. And in this respect, capacities for doing post-disaster impact assessments on a fairly rapid basis to understand the impacts of these and to feed that into national recovery and development planning processes. Given the recent history and current course of the global climate crisis, we know that these types of shocks are recurrent, they will continue, and they will increase. And as such, the government's focus on ensuring that it has the capacity at national, state, and local levels to better manage disaster cycles, to reduce disaster risk for the future, are among the core competencies of the government moving ahead is fundamental. So first of all, I would like to thank the federal government's Disaster Management Agency, Sodma, for the leadership in this process, in addition to the leadership actually demonstrated throughout the course of the flood responses, both for the Deer and for the more recent Goo rains, and for ensuring good levels of collaboration between ministries and between levels of government, especially state and local authorities in the course of these responses. And I do hope, Excellency Commissioner and Sodma colleagues, that you feel that this assessment and its process and the engagement from the partners has helped to contribute building capacities to manage these types of processes moving ahead. I would also like to thank the core partners of the global tripartite arrangement between the European Union, the World Bank, and the United Nations. This is a standing global arrangement to do post-disaster assessments jointly in countries. We have done so across many countries to support authorities to assess the impacts of many disasters internationally. And of course, we do find, and the reason for the partnership is that coming together to do this work collaboratively is far more valuable and impactful than doing it on our own and in silos. And bringing together the vast technical resources and substantive expertise of the EU, the World Bank, and the UN to support national authorities across sectors and with varied competencies, I think provides for a much better quality result. On the UN side, I also must appreciate the leadership of UNDP in coordinating amongst the 10 agency funds and programs that participated in this exercise, and for providing overall technical substantive leadership to the process. Colleagues, knowing that climate shocks and extreme weather events will continue in Somalia, it's important for us to remind ourselves that these shocks do not inevitably lead to disasters. In Somalia, as the Deputy Prime Minister has said to us a number of times, there will almost always be too little or too much water. But the impact on communities and the impact on families does not have to be severe. These climate shocks do not have to turn into disasters. Greater preparedness, greater increased resilience to such shocks can prevent these from becoming disasters. And I would argue that we're already seeing the impact of this in practice and reality. The drought of 22 to 23 was worse than the drought back in 2010 to 11, but the human impact was far less. The same can be said of the deer rains, and the extent of the rains and the flooding was far worse than the flooding back in 1997, but the human impact was overall less. And I think we have to take that as inspiration to show that our investments in resilience building are beginning to materialize and see impact. So Somalia is now seeing increased investments in development solutions and climate adaptation, in better planning and risk mitigation, and improving preparedness and resilience building for communities. These are and will continue to reduce the impacts of climate shocks, reduce need and vulnerability for the future, and reduce future reliance on external humanitarian assistance, moving forward towards breaking the cycle of recurrent disasters. And while it's important that the results of the PDNA will help us right now today to prioritize immediate interventions necessary to address the impacts of the floods, whether it's restoring livelihoods, housing, water and sanitation services, as well as rebuilding key infrastructure such as bridges, amongst others, it's also important that the results of the PDNA feed into other longer-term national planning processes in order to link up the immediate recovery needs with longer-term plans and investment priorities. This will include, of course, the upcoming National Transformation Plan, Somalia's National Climate Adaptation Plan, as well as work being done by the Ministry of Planning on durable solution pathways for internal displacement, and ultimately the Centennial Vision 2060, with a vision towards building a Somalia that is more resilient and able to ensure that its citizens can live in safety and security from future shocks to come. So with all that said, colleagues, thank you for the work done on this. It's been a very positive collaborative example, and I'm glad to see the progress being made, and certainly look forward to working with Sodma, partners and other authorities on taking this process forwards, including notably on the financing strategy, looking at the range of resources available to meet these needs as articulated, whether from international, domestic, private or public sources of funding. Thank you very much. As one footnote, I just need to highlight the health sector was not represented in what we have on the table today. It will be included in the final version of the report that comes out. That is important and consequential, given the intersection between health and water and the current cholera spikes that we're seeing in various parts of the country, which have been aggravated by these floods as well. So we do need to ensure that that's included in the final analysis. Colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you, George. We would like also to recognize the technical team from the World Bank, the EU and the UN. Without their support, the stress, the deadlines, the late time online meetings, we couldn't come to this stage. So we thank you, all of you. And now we do welcome the Christina from the World Bank, the country manager of Somalia. Welcome, ma'am.
Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, honorable ministers, representatives from the federal member states and UN agencies, our partners in this exercise, the EU and the UN, all protocols observed. First of all, I would like to congratulate Sodma and NIOC for the presentation that was made. I think this really shows, and I think this is the most important point about this exercise, that this has put the government in charge of disaster risk management, right? And this is a change, I think, and something that we should really learn from and use in future disasters, like George said. Both the partnership between the leadership of the government as well as the partnership with the international partners. So again, a lot was said by George, but just to say a few things more. I think so. What is the PDNA? So again, it's an exercise that is meant to identify loss and damage, bringing together diverse experts across multiple levels of government partners, the World Bank, the UN, the EU, to share, inform and practical approaches to work together, supporting transparent, evidence-based and coordinated decision-making related to recovery. But it's also, and I think again George made this point very well, it's to inform longer-term resilience priorities to reduce the exposure to shocks. It is possible to reduce, exactly like George said. And again, here from our side as well, it's important to integrate the lessons learned from this exercise into your next development plan, the National Transformation Plan, as well as Vision 2060. The PDNA is built on a partnership model across government, with the government in leadership role, the UN, the EU, and the World Bank. To alleviate the short and longer-term consequences of the flood, it's critical for all partners to use the findings to inform future humanitarian and development interventions, including forthcoming resilience, climate, and disaster financing. My second point is around how the World Bank is changing a little bit its financial model to be quicker in the case of a crisis, such as this severe flooding and drought that has hit Somalia. So over the next few years, as part of our country partnership framework, we will have different financing models to enable quicker reaction and quicker availability of finances to address crisis. So this is a global initiative. It's a new crisis response toolkit that the World Bank has. And we're just now starting to think about how to structure that in Somalia. But it will entail different kinds of financing instruments to allow quick reaction. One such instrument that we have had is something called the crisis response window. And in this case, we were able to quickly approve and release 80 million that went as emergency cash transfers to 215,000 households affected by floods and the drought, and nearly 30 million to support farming and livestock keeping households most affected by the 2023 floods to rebuild their livelihoods. Through our other investments, we are also supporting resilience. Two programs that have been key to this. One is the Urban Resilience Program, which will provide throughout its lifetime support drainage-related investments and climate-smart infrastructure in urban areas for up to 1 million people. This is again over the 5-year lifespan of the project. Our crisis response program, the SCRP, has rehabilitated 109 river breakages, 15.5 kilometers across the country since 2021, and benefited 750,000 people. So again, these are examples of how the World Bank, with supporting the government to make climate smart, climate resilient investments. Again, but again, in my mind, the thinking has to be forward-looking, right? So what are we doing? So we have learned a lot, I think, from doing this, and I really want to thank, as well as George did, our partners for working together on this, because I think it's set up a framework of how we can provide coordinated support to you but having you in the leadership role, and that's the way I would like to continue working. I think it's also shown the coordination. I like this slide that showed the information going up from the district level to the federal member state level and up to the federal government. So that kind of coordination, right? This is a really good rehearsal in my mind for the next crisis, right? We can do it better, we can do it quicker, we can have the financing instruments ready while you're doing this. So now we have to start looking for financing instruments when we already have the results, right? That we should already know that. So I believe that together, going forward, we can be quicker, we can make sure all the data is incorporated originally, and we can also already start to think about the financing instruments to address the impacts. So that's my commitment to you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we do welcome the EU Ambassador to Somalia, Karin Johansson. Welcome, and the EU was one of the key partners when it comes to technical support and financial support. Welcome.
Excellencies, Your Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister, honourable ministers of the Federal Government of Somalia, dignitaries present, implementing partners, EU colleagues, all protocols observed. I'm very pleased to be participating in this important event. I'm also very grateful to the colleagues of the World Bank and the UN who joined forces with the EU in the preparation of this report. Natural disasters increase in frequency at greater material and human costs globally. Therefore, it's imperative for countries to prepare for, respond to, and recover faster from disasters' damaging effects. Successful disaster recovery demands accurate and commonly agreed data that can guide the government's planning and implementation of national strategies. When information is timely, comprehensive, accurate, and justifiable, efficient recovery initiatives can be accelerated. The 2023 Deir floods in parts of Somalia were unprecedented in intensity, and together with the droughts are becoming the most challenging natural disasters that Somalia has to face. The post-disaster needs assessment report launched today is therefore a crucial step towards building the resilience of the country against such crises. It represents a collaborative approach and effort, bringing together the Somali government, international partners, civil society, and the affected communities. The report provides a comprehensive analysis of the damages and losses caused by the Deir floods, outlining effective and resilience-building recovery needs on the basis of the Build Back Better framework, as we have heard. The report is also a first step for the next phase, which should comprise detailed planning and concrete actions that will be inclusive, equitable, gender-responsive, and conflict-sensitive. The whole-of-government approach demonstrated by the Somali government during the work on this assessment is a very welcome development. It's crucial for the increased credibility of the government that this approach is maintained to identify and implement the required concrete actions. The EU is a consistent and solid partner in supporting recovery and economic growth. Our activities aim to build more sustainable Somali agri-food systems, creating conducive policy environments, promoting sustainable private investments, for example in agri-food and fish processing, and facilitating innovation and boosting nutrition security. In this regard, I would want to highlight the role of the Somali Riverine Agriculture Programme. This is a €32 million programme over 3 years that will contribute to enhancing the shock response capacities of the supported communities. hopefully reducing also the need for emergency interventions should climate change crisis strike.